Hi, and welcome to building a Bootstrap website in under 1 hour. Within this course, I'm going to take you from start to finish to build out a website using Bootstrap. My name is Lawrence, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to be your instructor for this course. I've been a web developer for over 18 years, and I really enjoy working with Bootstrap. When Bootstrap came along and I first started using Bootstrap, I was so impressed as to what it can do. It really took a lot of the CSS, the repetitive CSS that I was using and doing previously, and really made it a lot simpler and easier to build websites using the pre-built classes that are available within Bootstrap. Bootstrap has a lot to offer, and getting to know and getting familiar with Bootstrap can really speed up your web development process, as well as being able to make fully responsive websites quickly and easily. So mobile ready websites with all kinds of really cool functionality ready to go right out of the box with Bootstrap. So the websites that we're looking at right now on the screen, this is actually the website that we're going to be building within the course. This is a single page website. It's got fully functional animated scrolling. It's got a lot of the Bootstrap components, and it's done mobile ready, responsive, and everything that you would expect from a Bootstrap website. I've also included the source code, and we are going to be building out this website from scratch. Completely blank page. I'm going to be taking you step by step so that you too, by the end of the course, can be building out websites just like this. And these types of websites, they don't really take a long time when you utilize what Bootstrap has to offer. So you can build out a website like this, completely your own design, within under 1 hour utilizing Bootstrap. And I'm going to show you how to do this within this course. Also, since I've included all the source code, I do encourage you to work along with what we're going to be going through within the lessons so you too can practice and be able to do it within your own web projects. So when you're ready, let's start creating some amazing websites using Bootstrap. To build our Bootstrap website from scratch, we're going to need a few resources to get going. And the ones that I'm going to be using within this course, and of course they are optional. So first of all, you do need an editor, text editor, for designing and adding your HTML code. The one that I'm going to be using in the course is Brackets.io. If you already have a favorite one, then just stick to that one. Or if you want to check out something new, Brackets.io is free. It's an Adobe product, and I am going to be using it within this course to develop our Bootstrap website from scratch. I'm also going to be using a browser. The browser I'm using is going to be Chrome, and I'm also running a local machine in the background. And of course, because Bootstrap is front-end code, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, all you need is a browser to run it. But with the local machine running in the background, it gives me a much easier URL to go to as I demonstrate the code being built out. So again, this is not necessary in order to run the source code, because all you do need is that browser, but I am going to be using this in the background. So if you're wondering why do I have localhost as my main address, this is why, because this is running in the background. So this is a XAMPP local machine, and essentially it allows you to run a server, an Apache server on your local machine, so right within your desktop, and have it running in the background as a server. If you want to download that, it's free and it's available at apachefriends.org, and you can download it on whatever machine you're using. So if you're using a Mac or Linux, they do have versions of that as well. And if you're looking to run a PHP environment and a database, this is a great way to get started with doing that as well. And of course, the other resource that I'm going to be using is Bootstrap, because this course is based around designing a website rapidly using the Bootstrap library, and I'm going to show you how to bring Bootstrap into your web projects utilizing the Bootstrap CSS classes as well as some of the JavaScript framework options within Bootstrap. And I am going to be using Bootstrap 4 currently right now as I'm developing this course. The main version is 3.37, but Bootstrap 4 is ready and it's around the corner. So we are going to be using and creating a Bootstrap 4 website. And there are differences between Bootstrap 4 and Bootstrap 3, but they're not going to be as much within this course, because I am going to try to keep a more uniform format within the source code so that it is compatible with Bootstrap 3 as well. So we are going to try to do our best to keep it as compatible with Bootstrap 3 and make it in Bootstrap 4. So some of the other resources that I'm going to be using, I need some dummy content, and I usually like to use lorumpixel.com. So this is a great place to get some images really quickly, and images of course are worth 1,000 words, and having some lorem pixel dummy images that you can use within your web projects really makes it look a lot better as you're designing your website. And these are great resources if you don't have the content or the images, the assets ready to bring into your web project. You can use Lorem Pixel, and then another one that I'm using is blindtextgenerator.com. And so this is a lorem text dummy text generator, and the thing I like about this one is because I can add in those paragraph tags, I can specify the characters and words and so on, and I can easily copy and paste this into my web project to give it a good real look and feel as to when I'm developing that content. So in the next lesson, let's open up our editors and start creating our website. In this lesson, we're going to create our Bootstrap website from scratch, and we need a starting point, and this is going to be that index.html file. So I've just simply created a blank index. I've created a blank file, named it index.html, and this is where we are right now. So to get Bootstrap into our project, so the first thing I like to do is either I've got a Bootstrap template that I utilize, or I write out this Bootstrap code and set that up first. So that's the first thing I want to do, is bring Bootstrap and have a ready to go HTML formatted Bootstrap template. So over here I've got actually the Bootstrap files downloaded. So I've got the Bootstrap CSS there, I've got the Bootstrap JS library there, so I can bring those into my project because I've already downloaded them. But I'm also going to show you how we can bring that in and how we can utilize the CDN and bring those in instead onto our project. So we're going to be using the web CDNs instead of the local ones, but it doesn't matter which way you access Bootstrap. So as long as if you prefer downloading it, then you can do that as well. So a good idea when you're working with Bootstrap is not to touch the Bootstrap CSS file. If you're making any kind of adjustments or tweaks to the CSS, then go ahead and create them within another CSS file, and then place that CSS file under the Bootstrap one, or keep it within on page, because this is going to be a single page project. So we are going to be keeping everything on page, and then we're going to create that CSS file afterwards. So let's go ahead and connect with the CDN. So I'll show you where to find that online. So when you go to the Bootstrap website, so again, we're in the Bootstrap 4 here, and they've got a quick link here for the Bootstrap CDN. So you can simply copy that to the clipboard, open up your project, and paste that in. So once you've pasted that in, now we need to format the rest of the HTML. I'm going to just hide that sidebar, and we're going to write out the rest of our HTML. So this is going to be an HTML5 document, so my doc type is just going to be HTML. So we'll open and close that. We need to open and close our HTML tags, so just going to do that. Place this one at the bottom so that we're wrapping all of this code within HTML, starting out with head, so opening and closing head. And I usually like to keep the JavaScript within the body. And this is because a lot of what I usually do within JavaScript relates to the DOM, and of course we want to load all of the document object into our browser so we can have access to that. So we want all of that to load first, and that's why I usually like to keep my JavaScript out of the head section, but of course you can also tweak that as well if you want to place it in the top. So my preference, keep it within the body section. So now we've got our basic output here for Bootstrap, and we need to add in a few other things within Bootstrap. Because we're linking to the CDN library, we also need to link out to jQuery. So usually I use developers.google.com as my source for jQuery. So just going down here and picking up that jQuery library, copy, paste it in. Make sure you place it in front of the Bootstrap, ahead of the Bootstrap file before it loads, because Bootstrap relies on jQuery. There's actually going to be one other file I'm going to need, so I usually go over to documentation, and because again I'm linking out to the CDN, I do need this tether file at the moment. So this allows for some additional functionality within the JavaScript, the Bootstrap JavaScript library. And I believe it's only really being used for the tooltips when you're hovering over, so it does require this tether JavaScript library, so we need to add that in the middle. If you're not using any of that functionality, then what's going to happen is it's actually going to be throwing an error there within the console. So this is why right now at the moment it's a good idea that you add that in to avoid any kind of conflicts or errors or issues that might be coming up. So essentially this is our basic format, and then of course within here is where we would place our content, and this is what we're going to be building up within the next lesson. We also should always specify the viewport, and I usually like to include the title, so some spacing here for the title tags, so that we always know that we want to place that within there. So I'll just call it Bootstrap website. And we also need to specify some meta information such as the viewport. So let's set that up as well. So meta and name equals, so the name is viewport. I'm actually going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to pop over to the Bootstrap website. They've got a nice starter template there which you can utilize in order to bring in the Bootstrap stuff fast into a project. So essentially you could just copy all of this out and get started with your website. So I'm going to just copy the top part there, and I'm going to just redo that so that now we're all ready for Bootstrap. So let's save that and go out to our browser here and refresh it, and there we go. So we're all ready to go with Bootstrap, and in the next lesson I'm going to show you how to start creating some Bootstrap ready content. So that's coming up in the next lesson. This lesson, we're going to start writing some of our HTML code. So in order to add that in, we need to conceptualize our website. And essentially the website is going to be fairly straightforward because it's going to be a one-page website. So all of it is going to be just sectioned off, and we're going to have some links that are going to allow us to scroll to the different sections. We're going to add a navigation bar to stay at the top, and that's going to give the user to the website the ability to scroll to the different sections of content that's going to be presented within this web page. So that's the first thing that we need, and every good website needs a navigation bar. So this is the best starting point for creating a website. Is we're going to start with a nav, and we're going to give it an ID. So we're just going to call it my nav or something. We could actually call it main nav, so something that's more meaningful. So this is going to be my main navigation bar. I'm going to start adding in some Bootstrap classes. So we need to do navbar. So navbar is the class to indicate that this is going to be a Bootstrap navigation bar. And what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to close off that nav, and we're going to add the rest of the nav content here. So another nav class. So we've got our navbar, and if we want our navbar to go fully across, then we need to specify that as a class within Bootstrap. So it's navbar and dash full. So that's going to give us a navbar that's full across the entire page. And we're going to also add in the fixed options later on as we progress through this lesson. So for now, we need to add in some items that we want to use as a list. So we're going to create an unordered list here, and this unordered list needs to have a Bootstrap class. That class that we're going to be using is going to be nav, because we want this to be a nav so that Bootstrap understands that this is a navigation within the navbar, and that's where we specify navbar nav, because nav and navbar, they're two separate types of elements within Bootstrap. So that's where we need to specify nav. So nav is just, it's a navigation item within Bootstrap, or navigation component, and then navbar specifies that this is an entire navigation. One of the things that's different in Bootstrap 4 from Bootstrap 3 is the way that we treat our nav items within the nav class within Bootstrap. And so typically within Bootstrap 3 we could get away with just doing the list items, but we need to be more specific now within Bootstrap 4. So this is one of the main changes to note, especially when it comes to navigation bars, that there is this change, and we do need to specify the class nav item. So this helps Bootstrap differentiate that these are actually items within the navigation bar, and then it knows how to treat these accordingly when we add that class in. And every navigation item here, we need to add in also another class within the hyperlinks. And of course, it doesn't matter which tag we're using, so this could just as easily be any other type of tag, so that we could have that same functionality. So whenever we add that class in here, then Bootstrap essentially knows how to list these accordingly to the class that we've specified. And we want these to be acting as navigation links, so we're going to specify them as a navigation link. And then over here within the href, this is a single page website, and we're going to be linking to sections within our web page. So we need to just specify the ID name of the section. So we're doing an href. We're going to first maybe link out to an About Me section. So that first link is going to be About. And now we can just copy these over and duplicate them essentially out. So let's do another one. We've got one now for About, and let's do something like products and specify within the link products. So there's not any difference here between how we're laying out these list items. Also, typically you might have a contact area, so we'll just do contact as well. So these are going to be referring to sections that we're going to be creating later on within the course. So let's save that and take a quick look and a quick peek to see what this looks like. So essentially we do have something that's starting to look like a navigation bar, but we still need to make some additional updates to it. So within Bootstrap, so I'm just going to go over to the main Bootstrap website under components, and this is where we have our navbar. We can take a quick look and see what it's going to look like. So we've got a number of options of how we can make it look. We can do a navbar light, we can do a background faded. So another new thing with Bootstrap 4 is that we've got the switch over to set the background color. So we've got navbar full, but maybe let's set that navbar light and navbar faded, because we do need to set up some kind of background coloring scheme for that particular navigation bar. So there we go. So now we've got coloring in the background, and we can also specify with Bootstrap 3 or Bootstrap 4, so instead of background faded, because background faded is a class, so it's a pre-designed class of colors that we can utilize within Bootstrap. The navbar light is what switches the text content. So if our background is going to be, if our background is light, then we do navbar light. If our background is dark, then we do navbar dark. So I'll just show you what the difference is here. So if I do something like navbar dark, take a look at what happens with the fonts. We can't see them because it's expecting a dark background as opposed to our light background. So just going down here, there's a number of options. So typically we can use any one of these color schemes. So we can do background inverse, background primary. So notice as well, this is also added new because we've got these specific colors, and this is what Bootstrap understands to colorize the backgrounds. And we can also set a style. We can specify a color as well. So I like to usually do that up here within the styling. If, for instance, I did want to create specific navigation bar color, I can do something like this, and I can set that background color. So remember, now it's expecting that our nav bar is going to be a dark color. So let's pick a dark color for our navigation bar. Maybe we'll just stick with black, and of course we can adjust that as we need to. So now when I refresh it, we've got a black background, we've got lighter text, lighter color of the fonts on our background, and we're ready to go to continue to build out our web navigation bar. So some of the things that we do need from this navigation bar is, because it's going to be a single page website, we want to be able to scroll down, but we want it persistent at the top. And Bootstrap gives us one class to do all of this, to hold it at the top. So we've got this ability here to do fixed top. So we can do navbar fixed top, and I'll show you what happens. And of course I still need to add in some content. So maybe let's do that as well. We'll add in a bunch of dummy content here, and that's what I'm going to be using this one for, to add in that dummy content. Select all. We're going to paste that in just underneath the navigation bar. Copy to clipboard, so I forgot to press that one. Let's paste that content, save it, go back out to our web page, and I'll show you what we mean by we want it persistent. So I have to zoom it in a little bit more, and see, now that we've got it fixed, we see that this navigation bar stays at the top. So that's exactly what we want from our navigation bar, and this is going to allow the user to come into our web page, click the link, scroll the page down to where they want to go, but it's going to keep that navigation persistent at the top, fixed at the top, giving them access to the navigation bar and to be able to go to the other sections of the page really easily by having this at the top. So the next lesson, I'm going to show you more how we can customize this a little bit, and then we're going to start adding in those sections that we can scroll down to and start adding in and formatting our content so it looks more like a website. So that's coming up in the next set of lessons. The previous lesson, we introduced you how you can add a navigation bar to Bootstrap, how you can place it and get it fixed at the top. So even if you're scrolling down, that navigation bar is persistent right at the top of the page. So there's a few other things that we need to add into the navigation bar in order to make it more responsive. Because notice now, whenever I shrink it down, well, it doesn't really shrink down really well. And if we're on smaller screen devices, we don't want these navigation items stacking in this type of format. We want to have that typical hamburger icon that we can click, and then we see the rest of the navigation bar. And this is one of those crucial things within navigation bars that you should add in, especially when you're designing for mobile devices and thinking for different size screens. So always take a look at your code, resize it within your browser, and just see how it behaves and see how it will possibly look on the smaller size screens. There's also another really good trick with Google Chrome. So you can do that inspect here. We can also see the device. We can toggle the different device size toolbar. We can see it within different sizes. So we can do something where when we press this toggle here, we can see that we've got now a responsive view. We can resize it. We can see what it looks like. We can also use these presets for the different sizes of devices. So that's the iPhone 6 and so on. So there's a lot of options within Chrome in order to better see and better test out what it's going to look like. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's update our source code and add in that collapsible menu item. And usually I like to use buttons because it just makes sense, because a button would typically have that ability to, that toggler for the navbar. And Bootstrap has actually called it the navbar toggler. So make sure that you've got toggler instead of navbar toggle. So this was with Bootstrap 3. It used to be called navbar toggle, so now we're navbar toggler for Bootstrap 4. So that's another one of those differences between the Bootstrap versions. So we've also got ability within Bootstrap 4 to specify what the breaking point of the screen size is when we hide certain elements and we show them. So we want to hide this on sizes SM, so small screen sizes and up. So that's where I'm adding in hidden SM up. And we also need to make sure that we're actually showing content on the other side, on the downside. So I'm going to add that in as well. And we need to also specify the color that we want to use. So we've got a dark navigation bar, so we want to make this light in color. So another attribute that we want to add in is we want to specify that this is a button, and we want to give it another attribute. So these are Bootstrap attributes that help Bootstrap determine what should happen when it actually gets clicked. So this is actually going to be a data toggle collapse feature component within Bootstrap. So we need to specify that as well. We need to also specify a data target. So Bootstrap uses these data attributes within the elements in order to be more specific, and it takes that information that we need in order to make all of these nice actions happen. So data target is going to refer to the ID of the content, the element that you want to hide. So we're going to give it a hash to specify that this is going to be an ID element that we want to hide, and we're going to give it, or we can just call it mini menu or something like that. So now our data target is going to specify that we're going to be targeting the element with the name of mini menu. So let's save this code at this point. We've added in the button, and let's take a look and see what it looks like within our web page. So notice that whenever we go out to full size, and remember I've got my screen zoomed in, so if I go back to 100%, and let's resize the screen. So notice that as I'm resizing and I hit that small size for the screen output, I get my hamburger icon showing up. So it's not yet hiding these navigation items, and that's because we haven't set up the target yet. So it's looking for the mini menu target. It's not finding it because we haven't defined it yet. So let's go ahead and define that. So for a container, I'm just going to use a div for the container. And remember, we need to specify that same ID that it's going to be looking for here. So let's give this div an ID of mini menu. And we need to also specify some classes here. So these are Bootstrap classes. And the first class that I want to specify is that this is the collapse class. And also Navbar. So the collapse class is going to be in line with the data toggle collapse. And this is all just so that Bootstrap can create the functionality that we're looking for. The Navbar, and the class is called toggleable, and we need to specify a parameter here as well, so a size. So we want to make it toggleable on XS, and let's close that off, and we're going to wrap. So we're going to grab the end div here and wrap this unordered list within there. So now we've got our button, we've got our mini menu, so it's collapsible now on the resize. So when I refresh it, so now we've got our menu item opening and closing, and everything's working as expected. So typically whenever we resize, we want to have this menu in place, and we want to be able to open and close it. So there's a few other quick tips that you might want to do. So typically you might see this over on the right hand side. So we can really easily with Bootstrap make those changes. And this is where the beauty of Bootstrap is, that we don't have to worry about adding in all these different floats and so on. It's already got predefined classes that can do all of this. So we're going to float it on XS screens, so XS and up to the right. And again, this is specifying what size of breaking point we're looking for on the screen size. So XS, XS, and this is new with Bootstrap 4, where we've got ability to really fine-tune where these breaking points are within Bootstrap. So let's take a look at that and see what this looks like now. So we see that we get that menu pulled over on the right-hand side. We can open and close it at any time, and we can just simply click open and close it. So there we go. So now we've created our, essentially, we're all ready to go with our Navbar, and if we want to customize it, we can add in our customizations and so on. So in the next lesson, let's look at our head content, because as mentioned, this is going to be a one-page website. So we're going to have a number of sections, and we want to have our main introduction head section, and then followed by the additional about me section, or the about section, product section, and contact section, and then finally a footer. And then we want all of this to work together. We're going to also have to move the content down, because notice here that some of that content now is hidden under the navigation menu. So we see that as we readjust size, we've got more text there, because this is still hiding underneath this navigation bar. So all of these things are going to have to be taken care of when we fine-tune the CSS. But first of all, let's create all of our sections within our web page. So the next lesson, we're going to create our head section. In the previous lesson, we showed you how you could create a navigation bar using Bootstrap 4 and how easy it is to bring into your web projects. So in this lesson, we're going to look at breaking up our code and creating some sections in order to navigate to those sections within our web page so that users can come in and they can see various sections of content. So first thing that we want to do is start with a head section. So we're going to just use the header element within HTML, and we're going to create a div here. So this div is going to be our main container of content, and so need to specify maybe that we're going to do an H1 and then something like the company name, so your company or something like that could go within this area. And usually it's kind of nice to add in a subheading as well to your content, or maybe you want some additional content with here, so maybe some more information about your company. So I'm going to jump back out to my web browser, and I'm going to open up the blind text generator, and maybe I just need one paragraph here. I'm going to cut down on the number of words that I'm using. So maybe we'll just do something even smaller than that. So characters, and so that looks like a pretty good amount of characters. So maybe I'll even cut it slightly more to maybe 150 or something like that. So there we go. So now I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to copy that, copy to clipboard, text copied, and jump into here. So I added a horizontal line, so an HR there, to break apart that content as well. And down here at the bottom, so maybe this is if we're having a sale or something like that. So let's add that button in. So this is a call to action right within your website. So the type is going to be button. And now we're going to use some Bootstrap button classes. So we need to specify BTN. So this is the same as previous version of Bootstrap, so nothing's different here. Your code will still look the same, so we're going to do BTN, and we're going to color it as a primary button, BTN primary, and BTN large, because we want a nice big button for users to come in and click. So let's close that one off, and we'll just do click. Or maybe we could do something better like best deal today only. So let's see what this looks like so far within our web page. So when I refresh it, so now we've got our head content there, we've got the best deals today only, and so on. So maybe this could be used to show and display some of the good deals that we've got within our website. And notice again that one of the problems here is that we can't see our content here at the top. So we need to make some adjustments. So within the website, we notice that the navigation bar is still hiding over it. It's hiding some of that content. So let's take care of that now as well. And here we need to maybe specify a class that we can use. So I'm going to just call it htop. And go up to my CSS, and I'm going to make some adjustments on that particular content area. So we'll just do that and htop. So that's the class that we're going to utilize, and maybe we want to be really specific that we've got it within the tag header htop, and this is what we want to happen. So let's first of all, let's give it a position, and we're going to give it a position of relative, so that we can have some ability to make some adjustments on it. Let's give it a margin top, and we're going to give it 50 pixels at the top. So that should give us enough spacing to move that content down so it's visible within the web page. So even when we're resizing, we can still see that this is our company here and so on. Maybe we also want to add in a background color. We want to add in a height to it and a width. So let's do a width of 100%. And also let's specify that we want to text align. So we want to text align. We've got a few options. We can do a center aligned and so on. So maybe let's add that center align in. We're going to do a minimum height, and we want that minimum height to be automatic. So set that in, and also let's add in a background image to this. So background. So we're doing background image. So background image, and we're going to specify the URL of the image. We're going to just placehold it, or we're going to use lorem pixel. So let's open up our editor here and see what image we can grab. So maybe if our website has to do with sports, we can grab one of the sports images and so on. So I think that we've got the path there anyway, so maybe let's just copy this one out and make some adjustments on the sizes. So lorem pixel, and let's do 1600 by 700 sports. And let's quickly take another peek and see what our website now looks like. So now it's starting to look a little bit better here. Notice that we need to also specify the font color because it's not coming out on that dark background. So let's make an adjustment to there as well. So let's specify that our font is going to be white. So color white, and maybe also specify the font size. So we're going to set it by default to 1 EM. So that's that's about 16 pixels, the 1 EM. So this is more of a responsive format for sizing. So there we go. So we've got our basic head section there, and we might also want to add in a margin at the bottom as well. So let's add in some padding as well. So we don't have any padding as of yet to fix some of that spacing there at the bottom. So let's do some padding, and we'll do top and bottom padding of 3 EM, and we'll just do padding all around of 3 EM. Let's refresh that, take another quick look at it. And so now we've got some more spacing around our head section. It's nicely laid out, nice and responsive, and so on. So we're ready to move on to the next step, and again I'm zoomed in 200%, so sometimes that doesn't look as great as it should when I'm resizing, but I assure you still it looks really nice on mobile screens. So mobile users would probably see something more like that coming in, and the text is nicely resizing and so on. So in the next lesson, we're going to continue to build out additional sections and hook up the rest of these web links and so on to produce our web page. So that's coming up in the next section. In this lesson, I want to continue to build out our web page, adding in some additional sections so that we can click and we can maneuver the website down to those sections. One adjustment I did want to make, which I'm actually going to bring back the lorem image because I do like the images a whole lot better, but because they're at the moment they're unpredictable, we're not sure which one we're getting, let's just use placehold it until we've got all of our content up and running, and then we can make that adjustment and actually bring in the image that we want to utilize. So I'm going to copy this link address, open up my editor, and I'm going to comment this for a second here, because I do want to bring this back at a later point, but for now what I want to do is use placehold it as my image placeholder. So I want to have a nice big image here because we are going to use cover. So I'm going to make an adjustment as well to the image that we're putting out here. So background image now is the placehold it, and let's just refresh that. And we see that now it's a lot more uniform as well. So let's open up our editor and make some adjustments on the background image. So with HTML5 we have the ability to use background size, and we got a size called cover, And what cover does is this actually helps readjust the size of our background image. So we see that this one right now, it's way too big, and when we resize, we don't see the full image. But when I use cover, we see that now we've got that dimensions here, so it's actually resizing and centering the image as well. So it's a much better way to present your images using cover, and of course we can't see it as of yet, but you see that it's keeping the dimensions even though the screen is getting wider. We do see some of the background of that image right now. So let's go ahead and create another section. So we've already created our main section there, and let's do a bunch of these sections here. So we had about, products, and contact. So let's create some HTML sections for that. So we want to do it underneath header. So header is our top section, and this is where our header content is going to go, and the rest of these are going to be called sections. So let's give it an ID, and we want to have the ID in line with what we had called over here. So this is going to be just HTML. When we click the href, it's going to bring us down to that section and bring that section within focus. I also want to add in containers. So containers are used within Bootstrap. So the container class is used within Bootstrap to contain the grid. So we've got container. And it also adds in some gutter area on the sides, so some padding and so on, so that this creates more styling, more Bootstrap styling within the element. So within now, let's set it up so we can have some rows. So class rows, because this will give us the flexibility to add in a bunch of columns in the section or whatever we want to do within that section. So now we've got our rows, or if we had multiple rows, this is ideal as well. And adding in a div. So we're doing a div and column. So this is the Bootstrap grid. We need to specify what our breaking points are. So we're going to do MD3. And what we're also going to do, we're going to center our text. So text center. So again, with Bootstrap 4, we've got the option here for centering text. We can just apply text center. And now I'm going to make 3 sections, so we'll just call it 1, and we're going to have a little bit of text. I'm going to just copy the text that I have over here, and this is going to be in preparation so that we can use this kind of like a mini template here to add in the other three column 3s, because we need to make sure that Bootstrap styled geared towards a 12 column format. I'm just beautifying that, so it's a component within brackets where you can add in extension manager. So this is one just called Beautify, and it's a really handy one because it allows you to realign all that code so it's more readable. So that's all that I just did right there. So that's got nothing to do with Bootstrap. It's just so it's more readable, and it's feature within brackets when you add in the component. So let's go take a look and see what we look like now. So now we've got our 4 columns there, we've got our header section, and now we're ready to add in maybe some other sections. So we had another one that we called products. So something like this might be ideal, where we want to highlight some of the products that we have available within our website. So let's just update this, and we'll call it products. And relatively the format is going to be very similar. We're also maybe instead of having it within this type of format, we can create images. So img, and we'll do a source for the image, and class is going to be an image fluid. So this has changed as well within Bootstrap 4. That previously we had a different class to make it responsive. Now to make images responsive, we use img fluid. Let's just grab that same source here and place the source in here so that when I copy it out, and these ones don't need to be as big, so I can make these smaller here. And remember again that they're going to be fluid images. And I'm also thinking that I want to do one more transformation here within this element. So I want to turn these into cards. So Bootstrap 4 now has a brand new class called card. So I'm going to utilize this. And I know I was trying to keep it as much with Bootstrap 3 and Bootstrap 4 compatibility, but cards are a really neat feature with Bootstrap 4 because they allow us to really break apart these different elements and format them a whole lot nicer and output them a lot nicer. So this is, I'm going to just transform this one into a card, and I'm going to use it then again as a template, copy and paste it, and then duplicate all of these rows. So essentially I'm going to have 8 images all styled as cards. So with the card, we've got various additional classes that we need to include, or we should include. So the first one is going to be called the card block. So this is where all of that card content is going to go. So the main wrapper for the card is going to be the card block, where we've got our card content. And let's specify that we're going to add in a title. So here we can do the H3 product 1. And then this is all being held within the card title, so we can also specify that this is now a card title. So these are all Bootstrap 4 classes. So card title, and if we've got a card title, we can add in some additional text if we wanted to, and so on. And then of course we have the option to do our image. So let's just keep that as card block. We'll do our image here with in between the two blocks. And then lastly, I'm going to transform this one into another one called card block. And we'll keep that paragraph text there as card text. So class equals card text. So let's take a quick look and just make sure that it looks the way we want it to look. So these are the cards. So ultimately what I want to do is I want to have a number of products with images and then some text underneath and so on about the product. And maybe what I want to do as well, I want to adjust it to be instead of MD3, we'll change it to MD4. And just going to make a few more of them. So 1, 2. Save that, jump back out here to see what it's going to look like. So we've got all 3 of our products, and maybe we want to have another set of products. So we can go to About, we can go to Products, and so on. And automatically with HTML, we're able to scroll down to where that section is. So let's, and of course, we're still going to be styling this as well. So now within the card class row, so I want to make sure that I'm getting that entire row, and with brackets, so I can really easily close that down and minimize it so that I make sure that I got that entire row. So now I should have 2 rows of images with 3 images across each row. So that's what we've got there. So again, this is all nice and fully responsive. Really nice thing about Bootstrap, just makes it so easy for these different size screens of outputs. And of course, then you could even more customize how you want it to look as you create your web page. So in the next section, we're going to add in our contact section, and maybe we've got another section that we want to add in that's just maybe some sales information and so on. So we're going to add that in as well within the next lesson. In this lesson, I want to create another section here that we can utilize within our web page and our web project. So this particular one is actually, it's not going to be a section, it's just going to be a little bit, another call to action essentially within our web page. And then maybe we'll have a container with some content and then our contact area right at the bottom. So I'm going to use Beautify, make it look much nicer here, and I'm going to close off these sections. So we've got the About Me section here, we've got our header section, and so on. So I'm going to, maybe I can just reuse some of this code that I created in About Me, make it smaller. And then going down to here, so I can utilize that same About down here. And then just update this to be more, I'll call it more or something like that, container, and give it MD12. Let's hide all of these here and copy and paste all of these paragraphs. So this is just maybe some information about the web page. So this is going to be a section. We're not going to actually link to it from our content above. So just create some spacing here between what we're doing within our web page. And I'm going to call this a side because I don't want to have this as an actual section. So I don't want to take the same properties as typically would be done with a section, but I want to use the Bootstrap styling in order to do this. So I'm going to use div. I'm going to create a class, and this class is going to be container. And this is going to be essentially another type of call to action within our page. We're also going to use that text center class to center our text. And then we're going to have some kind of action here that we want to have within our web page. So here is your email to the list to get the best deals first. So our call to action essentially is going to be maybe a modal pop-up to add in your email or so on. And then we're just going to have, so maybe I'll create a button here and give it a class. So button, and we'll do primary. So primary button, and within this button, we're going to say add email. So let's take a look and see what this looks like now within the web page. Refresh it. So we've got this particular section. So we need to actually make some way to distinguish this. So we can do that within our CSS as well. But first, before we do that, before we jump into the CSS, the contact section, and then as well as the footer. So let's create some placeholders for that. So section, and then this one is going to have an ID of contact. So that's our contact section, and we're going to need some divs in here. So opening and closing divs. And then lastly, let's create our footer. And then this is where we would place copyright info, blah, blah, blah. So maybe this could be where we've got our company name and so on, copyright and so on. Let's jump out and see what our web page looks like now. So we've got our container there, we've got our contact area, and then we're going to add in the rest of the Bootstrap components for added functionality, look and feel for our website. So all of this is coming up in the next set of lessons. This lesson, I want to do some updates to some of the typography, and we're going to make some updates using Bootstrap. So over here within our Navbar, we've got all lowercase, about, products, and contact. So typically what you might see within the navigation bar, you might see it all capitalized or all uppercase. So in order to make this transformation, this is really easy within Bootstrap. So we've got a number of places where we can place that, and if we want to trace it across that whole navigation bar, we can just do text dash class, and let's just do the capitalize. So again, we do have a few options, and now when I go back out here, refresh it, we see that now they're all capitalized. We could just as easily do uppercase. So if you find that, well, you don't want capitalized, you want text uppercase, we can really easily make that update and update that within our website. So one of the other things that I also want to mention here, so I have been working with Text Center, and I just realized that with Bootstrap 3 we can use Text Center, but with Bootstrap 4, again, just like all the other classes where now we need to specify when we're floating it over to the right on what size screens we want to float it over to the right, we need to specify instead of Text Center, we need to update it, and we need to specify what the breakpoint is and where we want to center that text. So I'm going to do a quick update and update all of my text centers to be excess text center, so that way my text is actually going to be centered within Bootstrap 4. And so that's one of the major updates with Bootstrap 4. It's given us this ability to center text. So now when I go out and refresh it, let's go take a look and pay attention to the text and see what happens with the text. So when I refresh it, all of our text is now nice and neatly centered. So remember, with Bootstrap 4, one of the major changes is we've gotten more control on how our content and our typography behaves within different screen sizes, and with more control, that means that we need to be more specific with the classes that we're using in order to accomplish those goals. So make those updates, and that's for Bootstrap 4 and transforming it from Bootstrap 3 code. In this lesson, we're going to be creating our contact form. So we already created a placeholder between the footer and this particular section here. So let's open up our editor and add in our contact form content. So we've got our section that we set up earlier. So it's just a plain section with an ID for contact. So first of all, I want to create a div here, give it a class of container. So this is a Bootstrap class that allow us to hold the contents of our form content. Now let's create the form element here and create our first field. So this field, we're going to give it a class of form group. So essentially what form group is going to do is this is going to allow us to group together the various form elements that we're asking for this particular input field. So let's start out and create label. And we're going to give a label to, so we're going to have a username. So uname is going to be the name of the field or the ID of the input field. Username. So we want the user to enter in their username. And now let's create that input field. So input, and we'll give it a name. So we're going to give it the name, the same as what we've got the label. And also we need to create an ID so that we can tie them all together. So both name and ID are uname. And maybe we can add in a placeholder here. Enter your name. And also let's add in a class. So the class is going to be form control. And the type of input is going to be a text input. So the text is what we're expecting. So we can save that and go take a quick peek and see what it looks like. So essentially what we have right now is that we've got our label here and it's on top of our field, and we could very well do it within this type of format. But given that we've got Bootstrap and we want to bring Bootstrap into our project, let's create some columns, because with Bootstrap it's just so super easy to create a bunch of columns and really style out our form content. So sometimes you'll see forms where we've got our essentially the labels here on the left hand side, and then we've got the inputs on the right hand side. So usually, typically, you'll see that the labels are going to have less space than what the input field will be. So let's set that up, and we'll set up a class. So the class, first of all, we should also add in control label for a class. And also the control label can also be used for validation. And I also want to set a width here, so a column width of MD4. So essentially it's going to take up 4 column slots. And that means that what I want to do for the input is I want to take up the remaining 8. So let's create a div to house that, and we'll do call.md-8. And then of course on the smaller screens, we're okay if we're just taking up the full available spacing. So let's save that, and now let's see what this is going to look like. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. So we've got our username. Please fill out name. So I'm refreshing it. So now we've got this over here on the right hand side. We've got our username on the left hand side. So also what I wanted to do is I wanted to update our footer. So we've got our footer class there, and maybe let's just do footer A or something like that. So give it a class of footer A, and I want to make some more, I want to give it some size. So just going into where we're customizing our styling, and we're going to give it a height. So default height of maybe 200 pixels. So this for now should give us a bigger buffer here, where we can actually scroll down and we can move that down. And we also probably want to do some padding around it. So do 20 pixels padding, maybe margin top. So this will give us some more spacing around our footer. And of course, we're still going to work on what we want to present within our footer. But for now, I want to really style out this input form. So now we've got a format that we can use in order to create our input form. So let's go ahead and create some additional input fields. So also, let's group them all together within a field set. So this is just another way in order to control all of that field information. So before we go any further, let's open up our editor here where we had our underneath our container, and within that container we've got the form. So within there, let's add in a field set. And this is used again to help group together content within our input form. And I want to place that right before we close off our form. So just going to restyle that so it turns out so it's more readable. So we've got these form groups here, and just like what we've done before, we can really use this, utilize it kind of like a template for additional input fields. So we just need to make a few updates because we know that we want to have that same type of feel to it where we've got the 4 columns for the label. So maybe this is email, or we'll just keep it within that same format. So we call it email. So for user email, email. And here we're going to add in email. And please enter email address. And we're going to update the type to email as well. So for HTML5, so that we've got the validation for email addresses. Let's go quickly take another look and see what it looks like. So now we've got our username, we've got our email, and maybe now we can add in a message area. So we want to collect a message from that user. So whenever they're coming in there to enter in some content, we want to create a message, and we need to use text area for this. So let's set that up. So we've got the same thing where we've got a form group, we've got a label here, because the labels are all going to be consistent. They're all going to be MD4s because we want to keep that same format. So the only thing that's going to change is going to be this input field. Instead of an input, it's going to be text area. And we'll give it a class of form control. And give it a name. So the name is going to be, so instead of you email, let's just change it to you message. So I'll give it a name of you message, give it an ID of you message, and let's close that off. So that way we've got our input area, and now we've got full message area, we've got first name, email, message area, and what are we missing? So we are actually missing one last piece to create our form, and that's a button. So the user comes in and fills out the form, and now they need to be able to submit that form. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to simply leave this one blank. So the label, and we're not going to have any label there because we want the same type of format where we're taking up the 4 columns on the left hand side for our input button, and maybe what we want to do is adjust this to be only a width of 4 because maybe we want to set our button all the way across. So again, this is depending on how you're styling it. So instead of text area, let's create a button here to submit our form. So the button type is going to be submit to be able to submit the form. This is all just plain HTML, so no Bootstrap quite yet. And we can give it a class. So this is where the Bootstrap comes in. So we can create buttons really easily with Bootstrap, and maybe we'll just give it a primary button, so the blue buttons. And of course, we can update this at any time. So now whenever you click it, it's going to send the message and shut that end that particular tag. So now let's go take a look and see what we've got. So we've got our send message there. We've got please enter your name, email address, message, and send the message. So we're all ready to go. So that's our input field there, and we're ready to send and receive messages within Bootstrap. So all we would need to do from this point is just hook it into wherever we're picking up the messages, whatever server code we're using to pick up this form information and do all of the processing of that email information. So in the next lesson, we're going to continue to build out the styling, and we're going to make some additional updates to the CSS, customize some of that CSS to make it look more like a one-page website. We're going to create some additional spacing between the different sections and so on. So all of this is coming up in the next set of lessons. Typically, when you're doing a single page website, you want to have a really nice catchy head section. So this one is a little bit squashed. We've got some content here, and then we've got all of this content the next section. So it's not really nicely spread out as you typically expect from a single page website. So you go to something like even with Bootstrap, so we've got this really nice head area over here, and then we've got some content and so on down below. So let's take more of that type of approach where we want to have this particular head area actually really stand out. So this we had given a class of htop, so we're going to utilize that. So the first thing that I want to do is we actually want to work as if we're working from mobile first perspective. So that means that we're going to be using min width, the media query for min width, because we're going to be starting at any screen size that's the minimum width and above. And this is where we're going to be setting our class information. So for htop, we're going to set a minimum height to be 100%. So let's go back out here, refresh it, and now we'll take a look at this. And there's one other thing that we need to set. We need to also specify that we want to set our overall body. So going back into the main style area, and we are going to be updating this to a CSS file. So just for the purposes of the lesson, so I don't have to flip back and forth between files, I'm doing it within the page itself, but we are eventually going to take this and link out to a CSS file. So we want the body and we want the HTML to have a height of 100%. And we also want it to have a width of 100%. Because this is typical for single page websites where we're taking up all of the available real estate that's available to us within the web page. And we also need to make some adjustments here. So I want to have it actually on that top element here, so that htop. So I'm going to move that one over to there, and I'm going to get rid of this part over here. So this is going to apply to that header element. So notice when we do that, then we get that full feel of the full website effect for us. And so basically now we've got our full header area, and we can maybe even go back and update and add in our image that we had removed before, so that we can load that image in the background. And we'll take a look and we'll see what that looks like now. So when I refresh it, so now we've got a full image in the background, fully resizable, and of course we're not sure because we're using lorem pixel, so we're not actually sure what images we're going to get. So as you can see, some of them will look better with the white text and other ones won't. Maybe the solution to that is to add maybe a darker background or a kind of see-through background for that. So let's open up our editor and add that in. So we've got our paragraph here for htop. We've got a paragraph. So maybe that first div, we can have kind of a white type background to that. So let's add that in across all of them. So use htop, and maybe we'll just call it to that first div there. And this is where we can use the background, the RGB background colors. So let's set that up. So background color, and we're going to set that up as RGB. So that's red, green, blue colors. And if we want to have a dark color, then we go really low in the numbers. So let's just do 000, and we'll do transparent here. So this is a fallback for some of the older browsers. And then also we're going to do background color. So just after that, make sure that we do it after. So we're going to do RGBA. So for these are for browsers that don't understand RGBA, that they'll just skip over this and they'll take the RGB color, which is just going to be that black transparent color. So now we'll set that up, and maybe we can do 0.6. So let's go back out and refresh this and take a look and see what we've got. So now it's a little bit more evident what we've got here, and maybe even in here we can set some padding here, so maybe 10 pixels of padding, so we're not right up against the borders there. So this is it does stand out quite a bit better. And so now we've got our full background, and we're ready to go to add some additional styling to the next section. So that's coming up in the next lesson. The last lesson, we saw how we can have a full page image here right within our header, and as we scroll down we see that some of these sections, they're a little bit small and they're not actually ideal. So let's make some updates to that, and also let's add in some additional content. So first of all, let's go down to the section and create, so we already have a row here, so let's add in a row above, and within that row let's add in another div, and we'll give it a class. So maybe we can give it a class of 12 or something like that, and then we'll add in some content in between there, and then this is going to be our content that we can utilize within the rest of our project here. So maybe we've got a couple paragraphs here going all the way across, and let's take a look at this now and see what it looks like. So yeah, it doesn't really look that great because it's all the same text, but this is just placeholder content again as well. So maybe also want to add in one underneath all of those rows, and also all depending on how you want to style your web page and your web project. So maybe what I want to do is I want to remove out some of this content so it doesn't all look exactly the same. So that way, let's go back out and refresh it, take another look at it, and just see what it looks like. So now we've got a bunch of content above, we've got our 4 columns here, we've got a bunch of content below. So let's also, it's a little bit squished here, so let's add in some customized styling, just like what we did before, where we added in all of the different minimum heights. Let's use that same format, and we'll do M section, because we want to grab all the sections that we want to affect. So those are those 3 that we're actually going to be clicking. So we want to give them all a class called M section. So let's first scroll down to About and add in a class of M section, and I'm going to just copy and paste. So we had About, we had Products, and we had our contact form. We do want to be specific where we're applying all of the styling to, so let's refresh it, take another look, and see what we've got now. So now we've got full page sections here, so there's still a little, no, we need more space between them as well. And also, whenever we click it, we notice that some of that text is cut off. There's a really quick way to add in a really quick solution for that, and that's with padding. So whenever I add in padding, and again, remember we're doing mobile first, so we might not necessarily want the padding on the smaller screens, but we definitely want it on the screens larger than 786 or 68. So let's add that padding in, and maybe we'll do something like a 6 EM padding for top and bottom, and 0 for left and right, because we don't want to force any padding for those ones. So now let's take a look, and now everything is aligning much better whenever we make our clicks, and we can also scroll the different pages. So now we also have an option where we can add in some customized backgrounds to these ones as well. So we can do something where we've already named a lot of the sections, so we can just reutilize the names and the information and do that background image. So we don't need any of this, and we can cut out some of that, and now we can specify these via the IDs. So we had an about, and I believe there's another one called cats. So maybe the about, we want to have a cat in the background. So now when we scroll down to there, we see we've got this cat in the background. And yeah, so our image there, it's we need to work on the background colors as well, those RGB colors, because we're not able to see those colors. We're not able to really easily see that. So let's also add in, maybe we can add in a comma there, and we can do something like about. And I believe we had one div for all of that. So now we can take a look at that and see how that turns out. So of course that's black, and the text here was white. So we might have to probably make an adjustment on the text as well. So we've got the background there, so we've got all of that coming out. So let's update that color to white. And now refresh it. So now we can actually see our content. So company, the about me section, maybe for the products we might not want to have anything. And then lastly, for this last spot, let's create a city. So this one was contact div. So for our first div, let's add that background color in. And so we've got our contact there. And now let's, so it looks like what's happening here is that we're doubling up on this transparent. So maybe what I want to do is remove that out, where it's applying it to all the divs there. So when we want to apply it to directly, let's go take a look at our code and see how we can make an adjustment to this. So we have a contact and we have our div, our class container, and we see we've got that same format here. So what may be the best idea to do is to do, so if we have any about with a container within it, then that's where we want to make that application of that background color, so that now it's a lot more uniform. And we still need to update to add in an image for the background there, so let's take care of that as well. So we created one for about, let's create one for contact. And we want it to have city background. Let's just quick beautify, go back out, refresh it. And now when I click the contacts, I've got a nice city background there. I've got a cat up here within this section, and I've got within my head section. So in the next lesson, we're going to do some more fine tuning of our CSS, and we're also going to be looking at maybe adding in a modal, so it's pop-up window there whenever maybe this best deals today gets clicked and we can get some more information. We can have a little pop-up there with some deal information or something like that. So let's do those updates in the upcoming lesson. In this lesson, I want to update what happens here whenever we click the best deals today only. So right now we don't have anything happening, and I want to make an update to that so that we can actually create a modal and have a pop-up window and so on. So let's go open up our editor, go down to the bottom. So usually for modals, I'll create modals right at the bottom of the page because they're actually, that's probably the best place for them. So after we've finished off all the rest of the source code, then this is where we create that modal. And so modals are those pop-ups by default from Bootstrap, and they're really easy to create, and users really love them. So they're really nice kind of pop-up communication dialogue windows for users. So first of all, let's give it an ID. So maybe we'll just call it modal1 in case we've got more than just that one modal. Give it a class of modal, and we can give it a role as well of dialogue, so that we know that what the purpose of this particular element is going to be. So let's open this up and do another div here, give it a class. So with Bootstrap, it's all about the classes, so modal, dialogue. And we'll give it a role again, so that so that we can better identify it. So role equals document. and close off that div. And now let's add in some content. So another div, and I know there's a lot of divs within divs here for Bootstrap, but this is the way that we can add in all of these classes and all of this different information for Bootstrap in order to be able to them to properly assess that content. So we've got our modal content, and modals are similar to any web page where we've got a div class, and our first class is going to be modal header. So this is where all of that head information goes. Best deal offer ever. So this is the head content of it, and I'm going to actually create several more elements here. And let's change this modal to modal body. And lastly, modal footer. And update some of that text in there. And by now, save big. And then within the footer, we typically would have a button, maybe another call to action or something like that. So this button, for now, we're going to create a button. We're going to do type button, and this should be button. So type button and class. So give it a class. So btn primary. And I know I've used primary in all the buttons, but with Bootstrap there's a number of different options. So for now I just want to set it up as primary, and then we can take a look and see what flows best within our structure of our website. So data, and this data dismiss attribute is going to tell Bootstrap what we're trying to do with this particular element, and we want to dismiss a modal so that it understands that's the purpose. And for the users, we're going to write out close there. And so now lastly, what we need to do is actually hook this particular action to that ID. So we had given something a date. We need to specify a data target. So let's go up here where we've got our button, and we've got to target that modal1 element that we've just created. So that will give this button the ability to actually to open this up whenever it gets clicked. So, and again, this is all done through Bootstrap attributes. So data and data toggle is the attribute. And then we need to just specify that this is specifically for a modal data target, and now we need to specify our data target. So toggle target, and we need to specify it. Don't forget to include that hash there. So modal 1, and I believe that's what we had called it. So now everything is hooked up. Go to our web browser, refresh the page, and click the button, and there we go. We've got our modal. So close that up, and if they want more information, this is the best way to add that in. We've got our content here. We've got a bunch of products that maybe we're selling. We need to also add some spacing around this particular one because this one's a little bit cramped. So we're going to show you how to do that in the upcoming lesson. So again, adding in some customized CSS as well. This lesson, I want to add some customized stylings around this particular element. So let's go down to where we find that element, where it's sitting, and take a look at the source code before we make our update here. So we've got our container here, we've got it called aside, we've got a container, and we've got some information there. So maybe what we want to do as well is maybe we can add in, we can update this to include some updated text. So maybe we could just update this to H2 so that it really stands out and we get some spacing around there. And also I'm going to give this one an ID. So we just call it side menu. And going up to here, and let's add in some spacing around that side menu, so padding. And we'll just do 4em0. Let's take a look at that now, see what it looks like. So now it stands out quite a bit more. We've got our add email, and we could actually attach this to another modal maybe that we can pick up, an email address or so on, or maybe have another special or something like that. So we could really easily just copy our format that we used for there, and just again as a placeholder so that we can utilize it. So let's go down and copy out our attributes here. So we had a type button, so similar format down here. And of course you can attach these modals to any different element that you want, and you get all that same functionality. So let's add that in, and instead of modal 1, let's do modal 2. More info. So instead of an email, more info. I think that makes more sense. So we've got modal 1, and now we've got modal 2. Not a whole lot here. This is just dummy text, so we're not going to really spend any time editing that. So again, this is just for placeholders. So we've got that one there. We can scroll down, and of course we've got our buttons here that we can scroll as well. So just above that content area. So there's our other modal, and we're all ready to go to create all of that amazing interaction for users with these modals. So in the next lesson, we're going to finish this off and update maybe some of this footer information, and make some Bootstrap updates to that, the background color and so on. And then we're going to finalize it by bringing in our jQuery and making some really nice scroll effects whenever the buttons get clicked. So all of this is coming up. This lesson, we want to talk about some of the Bootstrap utilities, and Bootstrap has really nice colors built in. So with Bootstrap, you can do text colors, you can do different muted types of text, and you can also select different backgrounds here. So notice that the last one here, we've got inverse text white. So I think that looks pretty good for our back or for our footer. So we don't need to worry about any of that formatting for the footer and adding additional content and so on, styling. We're just going to add that in. Now let's go back out and take a look at our website. That's our Bootstrap website. So we've got our contact information there, and so now we've got our footer all ready to go, set up. Really easy to do that, and that's the cool thing about Bootstrap, because everything is right there as needed. So we could easily change different colors and so on. We can update our sections, update our text, and pretty much everything else we want to do. So maybe even that call to action, what we might want to do is maybe have some more colors into it. So maybe we'll just use this one here and go up to that call to action that we were looking at in the last lesson. And again, really easy to make those updates, and I guess we should have some padding around there as well, but either way, so we can add in some padding if we wanted to. So side menu container, let's go back up and add some padding there. So side menu container, and we're going to do some additional padding around. So see what that looks like now. So that looks quite a bit better. Always padding is a great way to create, to really bring out your content and let users really be able to interact with that content individually. So the next lesson, so now we've finished off essentially what our website is going to look like. And typically with the single page websites, you've got actually scrolling done, and that's some automated scrolling, some animated scrolling. So this is all done with jQuery, and I'm going to show you to do this in the upcoming lesson to finish off our website. In this lesson, I want to show you how you can introduce Scrollspy, because within Bootstrap, we've got the ability to actually track where the user is, and we can highlight the different navigation items as the user actually scrolls through. So as we see right now, we're not actually sure which page we're on because we're not having any highlights, and this is where Scrollspy comes into play. So Scrollspy needs to get added to the scrollable area. So this is data spy, and we want to spy the scroll And then we also want to specify what we're targeting, where we're targeting this. And this, again, this is that data target attributes, so data target, so that Bootstrap knows where we want to apply the scrolling to. So we've got our mini menu there, so we can specify that this is actually going to get applied to the mini menu. So it's going to look for these navigation items here within the mini menu. Now let's go refresh and take a look at, see what happens. So see, as we're scrolling and as we hit the different sections, now it lights up. And it helps guide the user to better understand what page they're actually sitting on. And we see that as the user clicks them, that those highlight as well. So much better user experience using Scrollspy, and again, really nice and built-in functionality within Bootstrap. So the next lesson, we notice that we're still using the default HTML, and typically the user on a one-page website likes to see that animated scroll. So I'm going to show you how to add that in with some customized jQuery in the upcoming lesson. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to make animated scrolling to the different sections of our website. So I've made it really large here, and I can also shrink it down, and we can see the website on different size screens. So the main thing that we did in the last lesson, we showed you how we can introduce Scrollspy for Bootstrap. Now let's add in some customized jQuery in order to get our actual scrolling functionality. So again, this is going to be animated scrolling, and what I want to do is apply this whenever our class navlink gets clicked, and whenever it does get clicked, I want to be able to pick up where we want to scroll to. So I want to pick up this particular hash information and utilize that within the web page. So we're going to be using jQuery for this, and this is just some customized jQuery to add that functionality. So let's open up and create a script tag there. And typically with jQuery, we want to do document ready because we want to make sure that DOM is already fully loaded. So that's where this document ready comes in to play within jQuery. And then the best practice is usually whenever you open up the brackets, close them off, because sometimes this leads to confusion and open brackets and your code not working properly. So now with jQuery, it's really easy to access all of those DOM elements. So let's take a look and pick up the nav. Works the same way as you would expect it within CSS. So we can pick up all the elements that have a class nav link. So the dot for classes, hash for IDs, and then just plain tag without anything. So we're going to add in an event listener. So we're going to listen for whenever they get clicked. And when they do get clicked, I want to fire off a function. I want to pick up that event information for the function that's being fired off. And then again, closing all of those tags that we've just opened up. And that's all sitting within there. So also, we want to prevent the default. So this is a JavaScript function in order to prevent that default action, which would have been that click. And for now, let's just console log out the current object of this, and we'll also console log out the event information. And then we can utilize this within the rest of our jQuery. So let's take a look at our web page, refresh it, open up our console. So now we've got our console open up, and whenever we click any of these, we're picking up all of this information. So up here at the top, we see that we've got all of the div information that we were picking up there, so we can easily pick up that hash information out of the div. And also, we're picking up that event information. So we've got all of this event, and we're preventing the default, so it's not actually taking that action. So now when we click it, because of the prevent default, it's not actually doing anything. So let's continue to make our update within our jQuery in order to add that functionality back in. So we saw that the particular element of this and has a hash. So let's take a look and see what that produces when we click. So we see that we're picking up those hashes, and what we can do now is we can utilize this within jQuery animation and actually scroll the page to this particular ID, because we're picking it up in this hash and we're ready to go and we can utilize it now. So we can find out where it's actually offset as well. So we're placing the hash in there, and we can do something like more jQuery functionality where we offset from the top. And also I'm going to put that hash information in there. So let's go back out to our web page, refresh it. So now whenever I click it, and we do need to specify this as a jQuery object here. So let's go back, refresh it again. So now we see that whenever we click, we get this number here. And this number actually represents the number of pixels from the top of the page, from the top of the window, that we need to scroll down. And with animate within jQuery, we have the ability to actually move the page. So let's create that function right now. So this is HTML, body, because we want to pick up both of those elements. We want to add in the ability to animate. So let's animate. So this is the built-in method for animation for jQuery. Let's open up our brackets here and add the function scroll top. So this is the parameter of what we want to do with our animation. We want to scroll it to the top, identify what we want to scroll to the top, so that hash object, and we want to get this number that we were looking at over here into where we want to scroll it to the top. So essentially what's going to happen now, we're going to animate and we're going to scroll it to that number. So this is actually the same thing as actually typing in that number and adding that number in here. So once we do the scroll to the top, we have additional parameters that we can enter in. So we can enter in a speed. So let's do 1000 milliseconds. And then we've also got a last function that we can fire off and actually create that animation. So this is setting the window location of hash. So this is that particular element identified, and we want to set it the window location of hash to hash. And we don't need a colon there. So now let's take a look at this function, see how this fires off. So when we click products, we see that we scroll over to products, we get about, and we get contact. So everything looks to be working properly, and now all we need to do is just run a few tests, just make sure everything is as we are expecting. So maybe even do a page refresh and so on. Scroll down to about. So Scrollspy is highlighting it, and that jQuery animation is creating that animation effect whenever we click on that particular element or that particular link to bring us to the element. And that's the quickest way to create that type of functionality. I'm going to get rid of these console messages, and this is the quickest way to pass over that information and utilize jQuery to create that nice animation effect. Within this course, we've seen how easily we can build out websites using Bootstrap and utilizing all the really cool functionality that comes along with Bootstrap. So bringing this into a project, and it allows you the freedom to create your website just by using your HTML code. So there are a few additional options that I want to still add in. So we've got all of these modals working, we've got our Scrollspy working, we've got our animation working. So everything looks to be running properly within the website. So now what we can do is we can bring this out and actually use our source code that we were using within the web page and bring this back out into a CSS file. So previously we've been working within that one page, and I did say that best practices is to create a separate CSS file. So I didn't want to have to flip back and forth, so that's why I was keeping it all within the one place. But now that we've pretty much completed the project, let's create a style sheet. So we're link rel and link out to style sheet, and we'll create a brand new style sheet. So href, and I'm just going to call it style.css. And close that off, create a brand new page, paste that in, and just save this as style. So now we've got the link over to our style sheet, and one problem there that we got to move that head down there, and just do a quick beautify of the code, open up our file once again, just to ensure that everything is working properly. And remember, again, I did zoom it in, so typically 100% looks more like this than that really big size that we were just looking at. So we can see that, of course, there's even more customizations that we can add in, but we've got all of the bare bones functionality that we'd be expecting from a web page, single page web page designed in Bootstrap, and we saw how really easily this can be done utilizing Bootstrap. And getting familiar with Bootstrap is a matter of practice. The more you work with it, the more you realize that all of these built-in classes that are within Bootstrap, you can really bring these into your web projects really easily. And if you're ever looking to find out more about what's available within the classes, it's always worthwhile to take a look through the Bootstrap CSS file, as well as going into the Bootstrap website and getting more familiar with what's available within Bootstrap. So within the documentation, you've also got examples here of how Bootstrap is being utilized and what you can do with Bootstrap. And then, of course, all the source code is always there, ready to go to be brought into any website. And I just want to make another quick note about the footers. So you can actually have a sticky footer with Navbar, and there's so much you can really do with your Bootstrap web pages. And if you do need to make some quick customizations, it's as easy as jumping into your HTML, updating a few of the classes, and you can have completely different added functionality from Bootstrap. And also, as you're building out your web projects, try to look at it as a bunch of pieces that you're putting together, and if you've got a bunch of pieces that are similar, use copy and paste, creating out these types of mini templates that you can really easily copy and paste and reproduce multiple times, and then just make some updates within the images here, within the title and the text, to really customize and accommodate those changes that you've made with the templates. I've also included all of the source code that I've been working with within the course so that you too can try it out for yourself and see what you can do with Bootstrap.